What is up, guys? My name is Regardt and I'm coming to you with another NAG video review. In this week's episode, I'm looking at a brand new gaming notebook from the guys at MSI. Stay tuned. Now, like I said in my last video, I'm on a quest for a desktop replacement notebook. My MacBook Pro that I used for video editing just does not cut it anymore. I'm looking for something with more processing performance. The second notebook in this series on gaming notebooks that I'm going to be looking at is the MSI GS65 ultra thin gaming notebook, and this thing is pretty spectacular. Now, in terms of options, there's quite a few devices on the market today that is well worth looking into. But the notebook I'm looking at today is brand new. It was just launched and this is the first one in the country. I'm very excited to take a look at it. The MSI GS65 is an ultra thin gaming notebook developed by MSI, and it really is catering to the guys that want something that is ultra portable, not much bigger than a normal 15-inch notebook, but gives you all that processing power under the hood. One of the reasons why we are seeing such an influx of new ultra thin gaming notebooks in the market is because NVIDIA has developed a range of graphics cards built based on the bigger VGA brothers called the Max-Q design. Now, NVIDIA's Max-Q design is essentially modified versions of the larger graphics cards you get for your desktop machine. These are available in your 1060, 1070 and 1080 variants. By doing various software modifications and obviously hardware modifications, NVIDIA has managed to run these processors at slightly lower performance and producing a lot less heat so that they are able to work in a notebook chassis. Now, it should go without saying that because this is modified slightly, the performance you'd get from a 1070, as is the case with the MS65, wouldn't quite live up to the same speed and spec as a 1070 desktop equivalent. Just something to keep in mind. Now, that doesn't mean that these perform any less beautifully than a similarly spec'd high-end machine, but you have to keep in mind that these gaming notebooks are designed to be ultra portable, and unless you're going to be gaming in various places, you probably still want to be looking at a desktop machine. It'll certainly cost a lot less. But having said that, there is a massive market for people like me who demand a slightly higher performing notebook, and gaming notebooks usually provide that. So let's take a closer look at what the MSI GS65 has in store for you. Now, like I said, this is a high-end gaming notebook with an ultra thin design. Now, if I flip it around to you, if you look at the screen, look at how thin that bezel is. It's a pretty impressive feat of engineering from the guys at MSI. It's a high resolution screen, the blacks are incredibly deep, and it's got an impressive 144 Hz refresh rate. So I've been very excited to play with the MSI GS65 gaming notebook. This thing is very impressive. Not only from an aesthetics point of view, if you look at how thin that design really is. I mean, it's not much thicker than your average top notebook. I mean, it is, look at that, really, really thin. Now, on the insides, there is a Coffee Lake 8th generation Intel processor. There's a GeForce GX 1070 graphics cards. There's 16 gigabytes of RAM, and there's two hard drives, a SSD M.2 hard drive, as well as a SSD, which is pretty impressive. One of the things that jump at you the moment you open the notebook is the SteelSeries-based keyboard. Now, with full RGB backlit display, obviously for a gamer, you're going to love what this keyboard can do. I'm just kidding. But it's obviously a standard RGB color set with most of the gaming peripherals these days, but the keyboard is great. I would most liken it to a standard MacBook keyboard, although we're not comparing the notebooks. But somebody coming from an Apple Mac background, I found the transition to this keyboard much easier than I would have expected. One of the things that's different from the MSI compared to the other notebooks in the series before this one is the gold trim that you'll find all around and even on the touchpad over there. It's very slick, very nice. And this notebook will certainly find a place in any desktop environment, even if you're not going to be playing games. If you want a high-performance device, this is certainly the one to look out for. It will look good on any desk. Now, in terms of processing performance and benchmark, I've been playing a variety of games, Battlefield 1 and PUBG mostly. I also did some Cuphead, although there's no graphic implications there. But the real power of this machine comes in when I tested 4K video editing, and comparing render for render, most other devices, this thing is about 30% faster, which was really impressive. 30% equates to roughly 4-5 minutes on the 10-15 minute videos that I'm talking about. So the results in the performance was there from day one, and I was blown away. Looking at connectivity ports, the MSI GS65 has the usual fare. It's got some USB 3 ports, network RJ45 connector, the 3.5mm audio and headphone jacks. It's also got two display ports, an HDMI port, and a super speed USB 3 drive. Now let's have a look at what's on the inside of this notebook, and that is why we are here after all. The MSI GS65 is running on the latest Intel Coffee Lake processor, running at 2.2 gigahertz, and this processor is a beast. There's also 16 gigabytes of RAM and, of course, that beautiful NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1070 graphics card with 8 gigabytes of RAM. The 15.6-inch LCD runs at a native resolution of 1920 by 1080, and like I said, it's got 144 Hz, 7 milliseconds refresh rate, which is beyond beautiful when you play most of your high-end games at high or ultra high resolution. Looking at the built-in audio provided by Dyna Audio, the MSI GS65 isn't the loudest notebook on the market, but really we don't expect that from any of these notebooks. The audio is crisp and it's pretty clear, but it's not very loud, so I would still recommend in connecting a set of speakers or a set of headphones. Now, as I said, the screen is absolutely beautiful to play on. With that high refresh rate and those deep blacks, any of the games that I've put on this looks much better than my larger IPS display, and that is a pretty impressive feat for any notebook manufacturer. Even graphic design and any kind of application that requires a high resolution on screen showed no effort when running on the MSI GS65, and it certainly ticked the right boxes for me when I wanted to do some more business-like applications. Now, when it comes to battery power, any gaming notebook never really provides you more than an hour or so gameplay in gaming modes. And we don't really expect it to offer us all-day performance on battery life unless we do productivity work. Now, this is where the MSI GS65 performs pretty well. When I'm not playing games, the battery life lasts a few hours, and I was very impressed with what I could do kind of on day-to-day work environment. As soon as I switch it over to gaming, obviously that battery life drops down to under an hour, about 45 minutes or so. But to be honest with you, that is not really that's not really the reason why we want to buy a gaming notebook. We want the portability. Battery power comes secondary. Now, the MSI GS65, one of the few gaming notebooks that I found that I would be happily putting on a corporate desk. It's certainly the kind of design that doesn't show off any unnecessary frills. I mean, it looks like a serious device. As soon as you open it though, those beautiful RGB lights greet you and you know that you're in for some serious gameplay. Now, apart from the price, which is around 40,000 Rand, there's very little to find fault with on this notebook. And even having said that, that is about the going price for a gaming notebook of this caliber. And if you want that portability, you're going to have to fork up a little bit extra for that luxury. Now, looking at the price for roughly 40,000 Rand, you get a pretty spectacular notebook. I think the thin design and the bezel, this thin bezel monitor, is probably the two top features compared to most other gaming notebooks in the series. There's no doubt that looking at the MSI GS65 HRF, that MSI is going after a very different market than the gamer alone. Anybody who's looking for a productivity machine or something that can produce 4K video and render it without much effort will be looking at something like this. All in all, there was very little to find fault with on the GS65. It was a fantastic gaming notebook. I had very few interruptions in my games. It didn't drop any frames. I did play with the settings a lot, so I pushed it to as far as it can go. And even at its highest setting, with all the shadows and anti-aliasing and all those little beautiful things set on, this notebook chugged along very happily. So all in all, the GS65 gaming notebook is a pretty awesome contender. It's also a very good all-round machine, catering to both productivity users and gamers. Now, keep in mind that this is one of the latest gaming notebooks in the market running the Coffee Lake process, and that's something worth taking a note of. And there you have it, the beautiful MSI GS65. It certainly shot up to the list of my favorite notebooks of the year so far, and I cannot wait to see what else we are going to see from MSI this year. As always, if you want any more information about the product I'm looking at today, please have a look at the show notes below. Please also like and subscribe to the video if you found any value in it, and let us know if you want to look at any specific products in the future. As always, from Regardt and the NAG team, thank you so much for tuning in. Ciao, ciao.